Incredible moment. Little girl surprises. Marine in tears. Unveils hidden truth about her mama. Jake Matthews stepped off the bus, the weight of his duffel bag feeling lighter than the burden of his thoughts. The once familiar streets of Maplewood stretched out before him, bathed in the glow of a warm afternoon sun, but they felt foreign. It wasn't the physical distance that troubled him. It was the invisible gulf between him and the town he'd left behind. Each step echoed with the unspoken grief of friends lost, battles fought in silence. He felt the eyes of the townspeople on him, admiration plastered across their faces, yet he was just a man in a uniform, a ghost in a celebration of who he used to be. As he wandered through the park, a soft voice broke through the noise of his thoughts. "Hello, what's your name?" Looking down, he found an 8-year-old girl, her bright smile radiating warmth against the shadows in his heart. Clutching a tattered teddy bear, she introduced herself as Lily, her innocence wrapping around Jake like a shield. For a moment he allowed himself to breathe, to be just a veteran without the weight of memories crashing in on him. "Jake," he managed to say, surprised at how her simple presence pulled him out of his head and into a moment of clarity. They began to chat. Lily spoke with such energy about her mother, a nurse with a hero's strength who'd faced life's unfairness after losing her husband. Her stories were full of bravery and resilience, filling Jake with a bittersweet nostalgia. But with every innocent question, the warmth Lily offered seemed to unravel his tightly wound facade. "What was it like, fighting?" she asked, her bright eyes wide and unguarded. Jake hesitated, a lump forming in his throat. How could he explain the darkness, the regrets stalking him like shadows? "Sometimes it's hard," he finally replied, the words tumbling out mixed with a rush of uncertainty that clawed at his insides. Suddenly she mentioned her father, how he'd fought bravely and had been close to a hero named Jake. The impact of her words struck like a wave, knocking the breath from his lungs. Memories of laughter shared in the chaos of war flooded him, tainted now by a haunting feeling that he hadn't done enough. Jake braced himself, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down hard. He envisioned all the times he could have done more, supported his fallen brother. Before they could reboot the conversation, whispers from behind the park's trees slithered into his consciousness. Talk of betrayal, of veterans not getting the help they needed after serving. It was a conspiracy running deeper than he could comprehend. Dark insinuations against him, against those he fought beside. His own mind was on the brink, racing with accusations he didn't know if he could face. He had to protect Lily from this web of confusion, but could he turn away from the truth when it stared him down? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell, and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Caught in a whirlwind of emotions, Jake felt the tension crystallizing as he looked at Lily. Her twinkling eyes, that hope, that unshakable faith, were what he craved. Yet the impending revelation of who he was to her father loomed like a storm cloud overhead. He needed to tell her, to connect their worlds, but fear wrapped around him like chains. The secrets of their shared past threatened to drown him just as he felt he was beginning to stay afloat. His heart thudded heavily as he searched for the right words, knowing what lay ahead could change everything. "Lily, there's something you don't know about your mom and your dad." The admission hung in the air, suffocating, a ticking time bomb set to explode between them. The silence stretched, echoing his internal conflict, a blend of dread and longing for acceptance. Jake felt every ounce of his being shift, caught in a liminal space of truth and fear, both utterly uncertain of where their journey would lead them next. Jake took a deep breath, and for a moment, time stood still. It felt as if the world around them had melted away, leaving only him and the innocent girl standing before him, her trust so evident in her sparkling eyes. He was on the precipice of revealing a truth that could shatter her innocent perception of heroes and virtue. But he also understood that his silence could mean continuing the cycle of pain, both for her and for himself. I was there when your dad, when he... His voice faltered. Memories flooded in, chaotic images of a battlefield and longing faces searching for comfort that would never arrive. Jake clenched his fists, wrestling with the duty to speak the truth versus the instinct to protect. We fought together. He was my friend. Lily's brows furrowed, her brow furrowing with confusion. You fought with him? Was he brave? Very brave. He was one of the best. Jake's mind raced. He had to find a way to tell her what happened, the burden he carried like a heavy cloak since that day. Each time he thought of it, shadows whispered around him, reminding him of his regrets and his failures when it mattered most. He saved lives, Lily. Many lives. He loved you and your mom very much. But he's never coming home, right? The question pierced through him and he nodded, unable to speak. The weight in his chest felt like lead, pressing against the remnants of his strength. I never got to say goodbye, he murmured, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. They hung in the air, a confession drenched in guilt, echoing the unspoken vows he made to himself every day to honor his lost brothers. Jake watched as her expression shifted from confusion to understanding, as if piecing together a puzzle that was far too complex for her delicate mind. But you came back, she insisted, eyes darting from his to the ground, eager for a thread of hope. Don't you want to help my mom? She needs help too. In that moment, a spark ignited within him, a flame fueled by the realization that this little girl, with her unwavering optimism, might just provide the catalyst for him to reclaim his purpose. Helping your mom is important, he said, meeting her gaze with newfound intensity. It's part of what I need to do. I owe it to your dad. A softness spread across her face, a fleeting glimpse of the joy he once felt before war carved lines of sorrow into him. I want to help too. I can help. I can cook and clean, and I can talk to her about adventures we could have. Her enthusiasm was grounded, a pure offering that unlocked something buried deep inside him, a belief that good could be born from tragedy, that healing could happen in unexpected ways. The shadows that loomed began to recede, replaced by the warmth of shared purpose and fierce determination. Together we can help her, Jake responded, the weight on his heart dissipating slightly. Would he act on this drive to reconnect, to forge a new path not just for himself but also for Lily and her mother? Time would tell if redemption lay within his grasp. But first, he had to find her mother and share the truth he had held on to for so long. The truth that would intertwine their destinies in a way he couldn't yet fathom. The looming confrontation, inevitable and fragile, filled him with urgency. As they walked toward the exit of the park, a sense of clarity emerged from the murky depths of his mind. Lily, let's go find your mom. Together we'll make sure she knows she isn't alone. And with that, the resolute drive for what lay ahead surged in him. Bold steps into the unknown, closer to facing the very shadows he feared. The reason behind his return began to crystallize. It was more than just an obligation. It was the foundation of his healing, and possibly hers too. But just as hope flickered in Jake's heart, a dark shadow loomed on the horizon, whispering of challenges that could threaten the fragile threads of his newfound purpose. As they turned a corner, an ominous figure materialized, eyes locked onto Jake with a heavy intensity that radiated danger. Jake Matthews. We need to talk. His stomach dropped. The confrontation he had tried to avoid now stood before him, ready to unravel everything he had just begun to piece together. Jake's heart raced as the figure loomed closer, every instinct screaming at him to prepare for what was coming. The man's face was familiar, a chiseled mask of determination, and an air of authority that sent shivers down Jake's spine. It was Carter, an old comrade from the field, whose presence signified not just history, but complications. Carter, Jake greeted, his voice betraying a mixture of wariness and regret, threatening to spiral into a confrontation he'd been avoiding for years. With Lily beside him, he felt the weight of responsibility intensify. This wasn't just about him anymore. Time's up, Jake, Carter responded, his tone clipped. We need to talk about your return, not just for you, but for all of us. Lily's innocent gazes flickered between them, sensing the tension. "Who's he?" she asked, breaking the heavy silence. Jake knelt to meet her gaze, forcing an anxious smile. "Just an old friend. He's, here to help." The lie tasted bitter, but he couldn't bring himself to unveil the darker truth to her fragile heart. Carter's eyes narrowed, as if he could read the lie behind Jake's smile. "This isn't the place," he said, gesturing toward a quieter area. "We have bigger problems." Jake glanced down at Lily, unsure. "What problems?" "Those who don't know you're here. They think you're still over there," Carter replied, his voice low. "And we have unresolved issues back home. Your safety and the safety of others rely on being more than just a ghost." Lily tugged at Jake's sleeve, pulling him from the weight of their conversation. "Can we help my mom now?" Jake looked into her hopeful eyes, a stark contrast to the mounting dread coiling in his gut. "Yes, we just need to. Going to see her isn't what it seems. There are forces at play that you don't understand," Carter interrupted, his urgency threading through Jake's commitment to help. "People are watching you, Jake. You can't just walk back into this life without consequences." Unease prickled at Jake's mind, casting shadows of doubt across the sense of purpose he had felt moments earlier. "I'm back to do something good, to help Lily's mom. It's about the promise." Carter stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And what about the other promises? The ones that involve your safety and the truth about what really happened? You can't run from the past, Jake." A wave of frustration washed over Jake, stalling his resolve. He had been holding it together, tethering himself to a mission built on guilt and obligation. But the truth buried inside him was not ready to resurface. Not now. Not in front of Lily. "I came back to honor her father," he responded tightly, clenching his fists. "This is about helping them." "By letting yourself walk into danger?" Carter's eyes were fierce with compassion. "If you're not careful, you'll hurt them more than you could ever help. I wouldn't let you do that to them. Or to yourself." Jake felt more cornered than ever, grappling with loyalty to a mission laden with emotional baggage and loyalty to the people involved, all while something darker swirled around them, threatening to engulf his hard-won resolve. As he struggled to reconcile the situation, he glanced at Lily, who was momentarily distracted by a nearby fluttering butterfly, a carefree symbol that felt painfully out of reach for him. Her innocence was a reminder of the vulnerability he was meant to protect. Torn between the urgency of his past and the needs of the present, Jake faced a crucible moment of realization. He had to confront not just the forces around him, but the truth within himself. "Fine," he finally said to Carter, the determination rising stronger than his doubt. "But if I'm to do this, I have to do it for them, and not some shadow of my past." Carter studied Jake's face before a flicker of approval softened his features. "Then let's make sure you get that chance. But it starts with honesty." "I'll be there for Lily's mom," Jake vowed, a sharp clarity cutting through his mental fog. "If it puts me in danger, so be it. I owe it to them both." Together, they moved away from the park, the air thick with unspoken truths. But as shadows of his past began to loom over him once more, Jake sensed looming adversaries gathering strength, waiting to exploit every fissure in his resolve. The confrontation with the truth about himself was barreling toward him like an oncoming train. Would he emerge unscathed, or would his hidden past entrap him again? With his heart racing and the stakes rising, he had aligned himself with fragility, knowing he was deeper within a labyrinth where light struggled to break through. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jake felt the dangerous undertow of a battle beginning not just with the world outside, but with the very core of who he was. Trees loomed overhead as Jake and Carter guided Lily down a winding path that led away from the park, the sound of chirping birds almost mocking the tension that hung in the air. Jake's mind raced faster than his feet. Carter's words repeated relentlessly in his thoughts. Hidden dangers awaited him, and uncertainty was a specter he couldn't shake. The promise to help Lily's mom felt both noble and foolish. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Carter asked, his voice low yet firm, cutting through the thick silence that surrounded them. Jake could see the concern etched on his old friend's features, the lines of worry deepening. They had fought together in harsh realities, but now they were entrenched in a different battle altogether. Jake met Carter's gaze, steadying his breath. I have to. I owe it to her. That conviction echoed in Jake's chest, even if doubt lurked close by. As they walked, each step felt weighted by the shadows of the past. Jake's resolve was informed by the mistakes he'd made, decisions that had cost lives, and yet, here he was, poised on the edge of trying to reclaim some shred of honor. He wasn't just a former soldier anymore. He was responsible for Lily, who had latched onto him in her moment of vulnerability. Listen, Carter said, pulling Jake momentarily from his thoughts. You can't just think about the now. What if her mom's situation is worse than you know? What if it endangers you and her? Those words cracked through Jake's bravado, planting nagging seeds of doubt. He wrestled with the idea that becoming involved wouldn't just put him in danger, it could also irrevocably threaten Lily. The innocent girl beside him was trusting him with her heart, with her hope. He felt the weight of that trust on his shoulders, pressing down, making every second feel crucial. I can't back down when she needs me, Jake said, shaking his head. I won't. Carter studied him, and Jake could almost see the thoughts racing behind his friend's eyes. You're fighting ghosts that aren't just yours, he warned, the urgency in his tone rising. You may think you're doing this for her, but are you ready to face what you'll find? Uncertainty coiled tightly in Jake's gut as he felt the tendrils of his past gripping him tight. Maybe he wasn't just returning to fulfill a promise to a little girl. Maybe this was a chance to confront the demons that had plagued him since he left the battlefield. The path opened up to an abandoned lot, remnants of a life long erased. Old concrete structures jutted out from the earth, a poignant reminder of past struggles, what had been built and what had fallen apart. It was here, on this broken ground, that Jake felt something shift within him. He paused, scanning the remnants around them. Something inside him clicked, shedding the anxieties surrounding the mom's looming struggles and illuminating a new direction. Carter, I need to prepare for this more than I thought. I can't just throw myself into it blindly. I have to know what I'm facing. A flicker of hope ignited within Carter's eyes. That's a step in the right direction. You'll need more than just a backbone to get through this. Let's figure out a plan, some resources we can tap into. Jake could feel a strange tension easing slightly. He was more than just a hollowed-out ghost chasing shadows. He was capable of navigating through this labyrinth of uncertainty. As they plotted their next steps, Jake felt a flicker of confidence. The shadows weren't just lurking. They could be analyzed and confronted methodically. Here's the real question, Carter posed, breaking Jake's budding clarity. Are you prepared to face the truth about what happened before? The words hung heavy in the moment, a challenge he couldn't ignore. Jake swallowed hard, his heart pounded, but this time it was a pulse of determination. They were underwater now, and he would either rise or sink. Then let's do this, Jake said resolutely, the path ahead growing clearer with every moment of acceptance towards his past, each commitment shaping who he would become. With renewed purpose, they headed deeper into the unknown, ready to confront not only Lily's mother's situation, but also the truths Jake had buried away for far too long. But as the night crept in, a shadow of foreboding wrapped around them, the kind that promised the past would not relent easily. Would Jake find the strength to face whatever shadows awaited him, or would they consume him whole? The air grew thick as dusk descended, painting the sky an unsettling hue. Jake took a moment to absorb the environment, feeling the remnants of forgotten lives weigh heavily on his mind. The broken structures that surrounded him were not just abandoned buildings. They were a metaphor for his own shattered past. Each crumbling wall loomed like an unsolved puzzle, reflecting his inner turmoil. How could he help heal someone else's wounds when he was still grappling with his own? As they strolled deeper into the lot, it hit him. This was not just about fulfilling a promise or addressing Lily's needs. This was his chance to confront the very essence of his struggles. The weight of responsibility mingled with the yearning for redemption and pushed him toward a revelation he hadn't anticipated. Jake was not merely an aide in a rescue mission. He had to be the architect of his own comeback. Carter's voice broke the heavy silence. What do you want to achieve, Jake? A safe return for Lily's mom? Or is there something deeper that you're searching for? The sincerity in Carter's tone forced Jake to reflect, pressuring him to distill his thoughts into a clear purpose. His mind whirled with conflicting impulses. I want to find her mother and ensure she's safe, he began, though part of him knew that was only a half-truth. But if I can help them, maybe I can help myself too. The admission felt oddly liberating, as if out loud it stripped away some of the guilt that clung to him. True courage, Carter said, is knowing when to confront a fight and when to walk away. The caution in his friend's tone echoed in Jake's mind like a warning bell. Salvation through confrontation had its risks. Was he prepared for that? Jake's breath steadied as he visualized their next moves. He needed to dig deeper to understand the realities surrounding Lily's mother. The thought of doing research felt more like engaging a target on a mental map, a process that chimed with his past military training. Lists, strategies, contacts. He would build a framework that felt achievable. We need to gather information. Who does she associate with? Are there any leads we can follow? A flicker of renewed energy passed between them. With a sense of purpose reigning in his gut, Jake began detailing a plan, mentally sketching routes and identifying potential risks along the way. The residual doubt waned as clarity seeped in, gradually unfurling a clear path ahead. Yet, even in crafting solutions, doubt remained a constant companion. His thoughts grazed over painful memories, the faces of comrades lost, the decisions that left a heavy imprint on his conscience. As flashes of regret threatened to fracture his resolve, he clamped down on the rising tide of sorrow. Jake, whatever happens, keep your focus, Carter reminded him gently. It's easy to get lost in the past when you have so much at stake now. Taking a deep breath, Jake nodded, knowing he needed to cut ties with guilt. He had to keep moving forward. Lily deserved that, and for the first time it felt as though he deserved it too. As they began to walk again, the shadows of doubt had momentarily receded, replaced by unyielding determination. However, just as a crack in the sky spilled silver light onto the ruins, Jake spotted a figure emerging in the distance. Figures were never a good sign in his experience, especially at darkening hour. He froze. The chance of discovery ignited a surge of adrenaline, and he glanced over at Carter. Who's that? Jake murmured, his instincts kicking back into high gear. Carter strained to see through the diminishing light, squinting as his heart raced. I can't tell, but... Just then, the figure turned slightly, revealing a glimpse of a familiar silhouette, and with it, a tidal wave of uncertainty surged through Jake. The implications of this encounter could shatter the fragile balance he'd finally begun to achieve. The moment of truth hovered tantalizingly in the air, as Jake prepared to confront whatever lay ahead. Was it a potential ally, a threat from the past, or something else entirely? The figure drew closer, the fading light revealing distinctly familiar features that sent Jake's heart racing. It was a woman, older than he remembered, with eyes that shimmered with a mix of fear and recognition. As she stepped into the dim radiance leaking from the sky, Jake's chest tightened. There she was, the ghost of his past standing right in front of him, and a million questions rushed through his mind. What's happening? Jake whispered, urging himself to remain calm. He could feel Carter's presence beside him, a steady anchor in a tumultuous sea. But the tension of this unexpected meeting surged within him like a tide threatening to pull him under. Jake? The voice, fragile yet familiar, trembled through the air. It was Sarah, Lily's mother. The weight of the moment descended on him. It was a chance encounter that could either lead to his understanding or shatter his resolve completely. He remembered her laughter, the warmth of her embrace, and the promise he'd made to protect their little family. But that had been a lifetime ago, before everything had spiraled into chaos, before he lost sight of what mattered. Sarah, he managed. It was a single word, yet it held a decade's worth of memories, of loss, regret, and unresolved feelings. The questions came spilling out, unbidden. What happened? How did you end up here? With every passing second, it became clear that this encounter wasn't merely a coincidence. It was a collision of destinies wrapped in the struggles of their past. He saw the flicker of pain in her eyes, mirroring his own chaos. I can't talk here, Sarah stuttered, glancing around as if the very shadows conspired against them. Panic threaded her words, urging Jake's instincts on high alert. Please, come with me, it's not safe. The urgency of the situation sharpened his focus. This was his moment to make a decision. He could pull away, retreat into the safety of his carefully built mental fortress, or embrace this confrontation for the growth he desperately needed. Let's go, he said, stepping forward despite the knots in his stomach. He felt the thrill of action coursing through him, pushing against the fear that had paralyzed him for too long. As they began to move, a sense of urgency replaced the weight of indecision. Each step they took only deepened his desire for clarity, for closure. His thoughts were a turbulent mix. Fractured memories of loss battling against the hope of redemption. Carter remained by his side, quiet, but observant. He could sense the shift in Jake. This was not just a mission anymore. This was personal. The stakes felt higher than they'd ever been. Before he had been driven by obligation, but now he was propelled by the need to confront his own failures, along with supporting Sarah. As they navigated the darkened alleyways, Jake couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The mission was unfolding, yet it felt different than ever before. The ghosts of his past were no longer just echoes. They were tangible, and they demanded to be faced. Jake, don't lose yourself in this, Carter urged, sensing his friend's internal battle. Stay focused on what you need to do. Focus, Jake murmured to himself like a mantra, grounding his thoughts. I have to understand what happened, to make it right. Yet even as they turned the corner into a forgotten street, a shadow crossed his mind with a chilling awareness. What if Sarah's presence in his life was a trap laid by the very past he was striving to escape? And as he processed this dread, the shadows around them shifted ominously, foreboding the encounters still to come. The moment felt torn with conflicting emotions. Here he was, hopeful for closure yet haunted by doubt. Would he forge a new path or be dragged back into old turmoil? Jake paused in the dim light as a figure loomed in the shadows ahead, forcing them to halt in their tracks. He sensed the atmosphere shift, teetering on the edge of confrontation. Is this another ghost? Jake thought, grasping for a sense of control in the chaos that enveloped him, knowing the next moments would dictate his future, past and present intertwining, ready to reveal the truths he had long avoided facing. The figure stepped into the sparse light, and Jake instinctively felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. He could see now it was a man, tall and imposing, with a hardened expression that suggested he was no stranger to confrontation. Jake felt his heart quicken, the initial thrill of the encounter now mixing with an aura of danger. Carter tightened his grip on Jake's arm, a silent signal to remain alert. What do we do? He whispered, barely audible. Jake suppressed the trembling in his hands, focusing on the man's posture. He seemed like someone who demanded answers, and it dawned on Jake that he might not be the only one searching for closure tonight. The man's eyes flicked between them and Sarah, narrowing as they lingered with suspicion. Is she with you? The man growled, his voice gravelly like distant thunder. Jake's mind raced. He wasn't prepared for this confrontation, but he couldn't back down now. The stakes had never been clearer. He was standing at the intersection of his past and future. I need to know what happened to Lily, he asserted, fortifying himself against the encroaching storm of fear. The man cracked a humorless smile, a dark mirth dancing in his eyes. You think it's that easy? You think you can just waltz back in and demand answers? His stare sharpened. You left us. You weren't there when she needed you. Each word was a blade, piercing through Jake's guilt, but he couldn't afford to let resentment take control. Finding Sarah had unlocked dormant feelings, but this man was a living reminder of all Jake had tried to forget. He could feel the weight of his regrets colliding with his fierce desire for redemption. I'm not here to argue, Jake replied, his voice steadier than he felt. I need to understand. For Sarah and Lily. The man took a step forward, his presence looming like a storm cloud. Understanding doesn't come for free, Jake. You have to be willing to face the truth about everything. Sarah shifted nervously, glancing at Jake, the strain on her face echoing the turmoil she always carried. In her gaze, Jake saw a flicker of hope mixed with doubt. She wanted answers, But what if the price was too high? Taking a deep breath, Jake made a decision. If it means I can help, then I'm ready. I've made mistakes, I know that. But I can't change the past without confronting it. He found courage in that resolve, an echo of the man he wanted to become. The man studied him, evaluating the sincerity behind Jake's words. Fine, he said finally, lowering his defensive stance slightly. The truth isn't pretty, and it might not help. But something happened that night, and it didn't just affect you. Jake's stomach churned. This was an opening, but it felt precarious. What do you mean? He pushed, knowing he had to prepare for whatever revelations awaited him. Lily wasn't just lost in a tragic accident. She was caught in a situation that spiraled out of control because of choices made by both of you, the man replied, his voice dropping. Those words hung in the air, heavy with implications that threatened to unravel everything Jake thought he knew. The picture was beginning to form, a twisted narrative woven into layers of guilt, pain, and abandonment. Yet the confrontation was a double-edged sword. Jake felt its urge for healing while simultaneously recoiling from the impending fallout. Is that why you're here? To blame me? He shot back, defensive instincts spurring him on despite knowing it could shatter the tenuous connection he had just begun to build with Sarah. I'm here because I don't have a choice. You can't keep running forever, Jake. You have to confront it, the man replied, an unnerving resolve in his eyes. And as Jake sought the strength to react, a crack appeared in his carefully constructed facade. He felt the ground shift beneath him. The fear, each small shred of self-protection, crumbled as truth beckoned him forward. Then let's confront it together, Jake said, his voice rallying around a newfound determination. I'll face whatever I have to in order to make this right. But deep down, tension whispered sinisterly. Was he really prepared to unearth the past? Did he have the ability to rewrite the story of their collective anguish, or would he find himself trapped once more within the very turmoil he sought to escape? In this fragile moment of decision, his world trembled, setting him on a path fraught with uncertainty and revelation. As they turned away from the lingering shadows, the streets around them pulsated with an electric intensity, a prelude to a reckoning that would force Jake to confront himself as fiercely as he confronted the past. He knew. The moment had arrived to face not only the darkness surrounding them but the shadows lurking within. What would he discover about himself in that confrontation? The air was taut with expectation as Jake faced the man, whose presence loomed like an unwelcome specter from his past. Human tension crackled between them, igniting a flicker of burgeoning resolve within Jake's core. He straightened his posture, willing himself to embody the strength he'd long stifled and standing as a shield for Sarah, who was now scanning both men with wide-eyed apprehension. What are you waiting for? Jake shot back, unable to mask the tremor in his voice. If you want to talk about that night, let's do it. He was surprised by the ferocity of his own words, fueled by desperation and the rising urgency to confront his past. The man's demeanor softened merely a fraction before stealing again. All right, but remember, Jake, the truth often feels like a curse. It has a way of ripping open wounds that were thought to heal. He gestured for them to follow, leading Jake and Sarah into the shadows, far away from curious eyes. As they walked, the city transformed around them, the familiar streets now alien in the dim light. Jake inhaled the nighttime air, a cocktail of dust, decay, and the faint remnants of hope. He could barely focus on the path ahead, consumed by thoughts of what he'd left buried. Each step nudged him deeper into a quagmire of old regrets. They arrived at an abandoned building, remnants of life fading away, much like the pieces of his memories he'd meticulously tucked away. The man paused at the threshold, glancing back at them with an intensity that conveyed both challenge and invitation. You wanted the truth, Jake. Are you ready to hear it? Judging by the determination swelling within him, Jake felt a flicker of the boy he used to be. A boy who wasn't afraid to uncover secrets, even when they threatened to devastate him. I didn't come this far to be afraid, he asserted, though doubt gnawed at his resolve. They stepped inside, the cold air wrapping around them like a shroud. Sarah's timid hand found Jake's, a tethering act that buoyed his resolve. She looked up at him, her eyes preventing him from falling into the abyss of despair that loomed ahead. If this was truly about Lily, if he could grasp even a fragment of closure for them both, he had to press on. The man led them down a narrow corridor, the walls adorned with peeling paint and remnants of a life once lived. It felt as though they were walking towards the revelation of their lives, not just Lily's fate, but the complexities that knitted them together in a fabric of mistakes and unfulfilled promises. "This is where it all began," the man said, stopping before a door marked with a graffiti scrawl. "You and Lily thought you were invincible, didn't you? What happened that night was a consequence of your choices, choices that put her in harm's way." The accusation clawed at Jake, forcing a well of memories to surge up like surging waves crashing against a cliff. He was being confronted with the granular details he had sought to avoid. The seed of guilt, long dormant, now thrived in his chest, choking him with its weight. "I didn't know," Jake whispered, his voice wavering as memories cascaded through him like a torrential downpour. "I didn't mean for her to get hurt." "Intentions don't matter when lives are at stake." The man's voice was steady, firm. "Understanding will help you, if you're willing to confront what you've done." Each word hung like a pendulum, swinging dangerously in the corridor of his mind. This was the moment Jake had feared yet secretly craved. The confrontation wasn't just about understanding Lily's fate. It was about reckoning with his own failures and, ultimately, his identity. "So tell me," Jake half demanded, half pleaded, "what really happened? Was it all my fault?" Time seemed to stretch between breaths, the air thick with fear and anticipation. Jake felt adrift on the tumultuous sea of his choices, battling against the waves of regret, as the man prepared to share the narrative that would reshape Jake's understanding of himself forever. What he would learn might change everything, about Lily, about Sarah, and about the depths of his own conscience. Would he sink under the weight of responsibility, or would he rise to accept the truth however painful it might be? The answer awaited him just beyond that door, a truth that might consume him or finally set him free. The man opened the door with a creak that shuddered in the air, echoing into the darkness of the room beyond. Jake hesitated, feeling the weight of every question he couldn't articulate pressing down on him, but Sarah's grip tightened, rooting him to the spot. Together they walked through the threshold, and the harsh light from a single overhead bulb flickered to life, revealing a scene frozen in time. Haphazard piles of debris mingled with scraps of personal artifacts left behind. Photographs, broken toys, the remains of someone's life. The room felt like a mausoleum for memories, encased in dust and silence. Jake's heart quickened, an unsettling mixture of anxiety and anticipation coursing through him. The man stepped forward, brushing away loose papers to reveal a photograph stuck to the surface of a dilapidated table. He unfolded it carefully, as if the delicate paper could shatter under the weight of its history. "This," the man said softly, "is Lily. This is where she lived." Jake accepted the photograph, his fingers trembling slightly. The moment his eyes fell onto the image, a rush of vivid memories cascaded into focus. A bright smile framed by tousled hair, the innocence of childhood captured in a fleeting moment at the park. He sucked in a breath as a surge of guilt threatened to overwhelm him. "Tell me," he urged, his voice steadier now, tempered by determination. "What happened that night?" The man locked his gaze onto Jake, searching for the resolve he'd just begun to cultivate. "You were the catalyst, Jake. Your reckless decisions that night triggered a chain of events far beyond your control. Your desire for freedom, the desire to escape." "Stop," Jake interjected, jealously guarding his fading excuse. "You're making it sound like this was all my fault." "It's not about blame, Jake. It's about understanding consequences." The man's unwavering tone pierced Jake's arguments. "Lily admired you, looked up to you. You were her hero. You didn't see the danger that came with the decisions you made." Realization weighed on him as memories burst forth uninvited, a kaleidoscope of laughter and reckless abandon. Teenagers cloaked in bravado, blissfully unaware of the storm of chaos they were inviting. "I never wanted her to get hurt. I thought we were just having fun." "But that fun had a price," the man replied, austere yet compassionate. "You both chose to wander too far into the unknown, and the world punished you for it. You cannot run from the fallout. Jake's thoughts spiraled, wrestling with a past he wished he could rewrite but couldn't. His heart raced, suffocating under the impossible weight of responsibility. What was I supposed to do? He felt the frustration boiling, a desperate need to shift the blame. But the truth nudged at him, relentless. Accept that life is formed at the intersection of choice and fate. You had the power to change your path, a choice you didn't make. The man took a step back, allowing the raw honesty to settle like an invisible fog. Determination ignited within him, illuminating the darkest corners of his doubt. What do I do now, then? How can I make this right? Begin by acknowledging your role in Lily's story, and in the stories of those around you. You're not just a spectator, you're a participant. Your journey is about more than confronting the past. It's about how you choose to shape your future, the man said, leaving a haunted pause hanging in the air, filled with possibility. Jake turned to Sarah, her wide-eyed gaze reflecting the confusion and support he desperately craved. We can't change what happened, he said, his tone softening. But I can change how I move forward. That has to count for something. The man nodded, his expression unwavering, as if recognizing the nascent strength blooming within Jake. As Jake stepped back from the table, clarity emerged through the haze of uncertainty. He turned, looking at Sarah again, determined to embrace his journey, despite its painful reminders. What lay ahead was an uncertain path steeped in challenges he would need to face with newfound courage. This was only the beginning, Jake realized. A reckoning with the past had ignited a fervent desire to find redemption, not just for himself, but for Sarah, for Lily, and for the choices that would define him. As Jake took a deep breath, preparing to confront the next step in his evolution, he heard the man's voice trailing behind him. Remember, Jake, understanding one's past is critical, but learning how to apply it to one's future is essential. Would Jake fully embrace the lessons ahead? Or would the shadows of his past continue to cloud his path? The air was laden with the promise of new challenges, ones that would test his resolve and redefine everything he thought he knew about himself. Jake Matthews stood firmly within the empty room, the echoes of his past swirling like an insistent wind. The confrontation he had been avoiding for so long had finally come full circle, but instead of dread, he felt a spark of determination igniting in his chest. The fleeting guilt that had haunted him for years began to dissipate, giving way to a new clarity. He wasn't merely a ghost here. He was a man looking to confront his life's narrative, to rewrite the future he yearned to shape. As he examined the photograph of Lily beaming with innocent joy, memories intertwined with the weight of responsibility flooded back. Moments spent laughing and dreaming without the awareness of consequence looming like a dark specter. It was time to abandon naivete and recognize that every action sculpted their destinies. He was done hiding behind regret. Turning to Sarah, he kept his voice steady, fortifying the fragile hope he felt building inside him. I know I can't undo what's happened, but I'm willing to face it. I need to help you and Lily. I promise I'll do whatever it takes. Sarah's eyes shimmered with suppressed emotion, but rather than falter, they reflected the strength of shared resolve. This was their pivotal moment, to evolve beyond the past and start anew, carving an uncharted path for Lily amid the complexities of their lives. Though the shadows of guilt would always linger, they would not define him. He would define himself. The man who revealed so much about Jake's past gestured with a likable intensity. Understanding is the first step, but you must take actionable steps toward healing. What will you do to ensure that Lily finds strength instead of fear moving forward? Jake took a breath, poised to leap into the unknown. Challenges were inevitable, but so was growth. I will be there for Lily. I aim to provide stability. I'll reach out to community resources, ensuring she gets the support I couldn't provide in the past. I'll also navigate this pathway with Sarah, reconciling the complexities we've buried together. The recognition in the man's eyes resonated with a shared understanding that Jake was on the verge of a profound transformation. Then let's chart that course. Surround Lily with the safety that you all need. As they walked out of the dilapidated building, each step took on renewed significance. Jake lifted his chin, intentionally exuding confidence as he faced the challenges ahead. The weight of the past now felt like a foundation, propelling him forward rather than pinning him down. In the days that followed, Jake cultivated connections that once pained him with memories. He engaged with old friends, veterans like him, to find ways to return to the community and assist those struggling alone. He worked tirelessly to organize meetups for veterans and families, creating spaces for healing, understanding, and hope. Through these actions, he began to redeem not only himself, but the shadowed profiles of those who served with him. His involvement didn't go unnoticed. Recognition poured in, both from the community and fellow veterans whose eyes sparkled with gratitude for Jake's dedication to rebuilding lives. It was a sense of purpose he had sought, the embodiment of change and integrity, woven into each professional achievement. Days morphed into weeks, and as Jake established a prominent position within the community, facilitating mental health resources, creating safe spaces for families, he witnessed a transformation in himself and others that he had thought impossible. Solid confidence took root as he moved forward, proving to himself and those around him that the past holds no power over the future unless we allow it to. As the seasons changed, a different kind of relationship blossomed between Jake, Sarah, and Lily. Together, they formed an unshakable bond, their shared vulnerability giving way to trust and healing. On quiet evenings, they would gather to share stories of their journeys, each narrative adding to the tapestry of their lives. With every obstacle overcome, Jake felt himself emerge from the shadows, embraced by a newfound sense of achievement. He was a man now, not only defined by his past battles, but by his courage to change and rebuild. He had forged a path that promised a brighter future, both for himself and for the family he had long wished to protect. In the end, Jake Matthews had indeed accomplished a meaningful transformation, not just for himself, but for others. As the sun dipped low on the horizon one evening, illuminating the world in warm tones, he realized that he had succeeded in honoring the memories of the fallen by choosing a path of compassion, strength, and resilience. This is the moment where Jake Matthews became a living testament to the power of growth through adversity. You need to subscribe now to witness more incredible transformations. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your thoughts, reactions, and theories about Jake's journey. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need inspiration to overcome their own challenges.